Myles Lewis-Skelly. Why could Arsenal's 19-year-old champion end up at Chelsea? In May, he lifted the Premier League trophy with Arsenal. In August, he had not started a single Premier League match. And somewhere between those two moments, the name Myles Lewis-Skelly suddenly appeared on the transfer radar of both Chelsea and Manchester United. What happened in just 3 months? Before getting into the details, one thing needs to be made clear. This is not a transfer that has actually happened. There has been no official bid, no confirmed asking price. What we have instead is a series of conflicting signals from several major media outlets, and that contradiction is exactly what makes the story worth discussing. Start with his place in the squad. Last season, Lewis-Skelly was one of Arsenal's best stories. From a relatively unknown left-back, he became a starter during the decisive stage of the title race, including the Champions League final against PSG. He made 36 appearances according to The Guardian. But this season is completely different. Riccardo Calafiori has returned as the first-choice left-back. As things stand, Lewis-Skelly has not started a single Premier League match. He has only featured in a handful of Champions League games, and that lack of regular minutes has also contributed to him missing England's most recent squads under Thomas Tuchel. This is the real root of the story. Not finance first, but playing time. Then came Bruno Guimaraes. Arsenal spent around £75 million to bring the Brazilian midfielder from Newcastle to the Emirates this summer. Their midfield now includes Declan Rice, Martin Zubamendi, Guimaraes, Mikel Merino, Odegaard, and Eze, with younger players still waiting behind them for opportunities. Lewis-Skelly, who has said that his natural position is actually central midfield rather than left back, now faces an even harder path into the team. And this is where the story takes a different turn. Football London reported that Lewis-Skelly had been offered to Chelsea and Manchester United. That report was later echoed by several outlets, including The Guardian and TalkSport. But there is one important detail. According to The Athletic, Arsenal were not actively trying to sell the player. Instead, the approach came from an intermediary, possibly connected to his representatives. When Arsenal were asked about it, they denied offering Lewis-Skelly to anyone. One source reportedly used just 3 words to describe the club's reaction. Forget about that. So who is right? Potentially both sides. An intermediary can test the market without Arsenal officially giving the green light, and that is exactly how the sources describe the situation. Market exploration, not negotiations. What about the financial side? This part of the original story still matters. Because Lewis-Skelly came through Arsenal's academy, almost the entire transfer fee from a sale would count as pure accounting profit, since the club would not need to subtract an original transfer cost. With Premier League and UEFA spending rules becoming increasingly restrictive, academy players can become extremely valuable accounting assets, even when a club does not genuinely want to sell them. That is why even one exploratory approach is enough to make the story explode. The reported valuation is also inconsistent. The Times previously mentioned a figure of around £60 million earlier in the year, but according to the latest update from The Guardian, that number has dropped to around £45 million. The Daily Mail, meanwhile, cited a source close to Manchester United saying it would take significantly more than £45 million to persuade Arsenal to sell. In other words, nobody really knows the true price yet, because nobody has actually put money on the table. And what about Chelsea? There is one detail that makes the story even more interesting. Before joining Arsenal's academy, Lewis-Skelly spent time on trial at Chelsea, according to TalkSport. If this move ever happened, it would complete a full circle back to where the journey nearly began. But tactically, it is not as straightforward as many people assume. Under Xabi Alonso, who officially took charge on July 1st, 2026 on a 4-year contract, Chelsea already have Jorel Hato and Pep Chavarria at left back following Cucurella's departure. That means if Chelsea were to sign Lewis-Skelly, they would almost certainly need to use him in midfield rather than at left back. Sky Sports added another important detail. Arsenal do not want to sell the player to a direct rival in the race for the top positions this season. Then there is Manchester United. The Telegraph reported that both United and Chelsea rejected the approach from the intermediary. But only a few days later, Sky Sports reported that Chelsea had made a fresh inquiry about the player. Those two reports may look contradictory, but in reality, they reflect the nature of a transfer that has not yet taken shape. Clubs can change their position from one day to the next depending on the asking price and how the rest of the market develops. But the most important detail in the entire story came from the player himself. In Arsenal's final summer friendly against Como, Lewis-Skelly scored. Afterwards, he made a heart shape with his hands and repeatedly tapped the Arsenal badge on his shirt. It was not a verbal statement, but it was difficult to send a clearer message. The Athletic reported that Lewis-Skelly, who has been with Arsenal since the age of 8, is not looking for or considering a move away. He signed a 5-year contract in the summer of 2025, which currently runs until 2030. So what is this story really about? It is not about a player demanding to leave, and it is not yet a transfer under active negotiation. It is the intersection of 3 things: a young player losing his place after a summer of major Arsenal spending, financial regulations that make academy players sensitive accounting assets, and a handful of leaked reports that make the situation look more serious than it may actually be. If Arsenal genuinely maintain their stance that he is not for sale, this story could go quiet over the next few weeks. But if Lewis-Skelly remains on the bench into the middle of the season, and another club puts a sufficiently attractive number on the table, Arsenal's forget about that position could still change. So if you were Arsenal, would you keep a player who currently does not have a starting place or sell him to optimize the books? And if you were Chelsea, would you gamble on a young midfielder whose exact position is still not completely settled simply because of his long-term potential? The transfer window closes on September 1st. In 3 weeks, we will know the answer. Leave your opinion in the comments below and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what happens next.